Hello, and welcome to the iStart Insider podcast, where we dive into entrepreneurial journeys of young innovators, startup founders, and industry experts. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Tanvee, and we'll be your podcast host for today.
In this episode, we're excited to welcome Monica, a current Division I athlete and third-year student at Duke University, majoring in neuroscience with a minor in political science. As a former co-president of the iStart Valley Youth Executive Committee and current member of the Alumni Advisory Council, Monica has been an integral part of the iStart Valley community, inspiring young entrepreneurs to cultivate their passion.
Good afternoon, Monica. We hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
No, well, thank you, Hannah and Tommy, for having me. I've been with iStart for a long, long time. And, happy to be able to help and encourage future entrepreneurs in whatever capacity I can. But doing well. Hope you guys are as well.
That's great. Okay, let's start by talking about what got you here. So, what would you say you're passionate about, and what has helped you cultivate or discover your passion over the past couple of years?
Yeah, I think I obviously have like different kind of passions and different kind of facets of life. And from an athletic side, obviously, fencing has been a big part of my life, and that has taught me so many skills and continues to be a big, component of my life. But I think in general, like, there's been a lot of just skills and things that I've kind of learned and growing up with my family, what my family's instilled in me. And so I think that like there's been some like times where like, you learn from stories or you learn from like just challenges that you face. And it's all about just being able to learn how to pick yourself up, move forward, and ultimately be able to roll with the punches, right?
So,
Yeah.
we know you're majoring in like neuroscience at Duke. Do you think like you could walk us through how you discovered your passion in neuroscience and what led you to develop the passion for that sort of field?
Since I've grown up, I was one of those kids that like probably when I was 6 or 7, like, I knew I really wanted to be a doctor, specifically a surgeon. I think that unlike bio and unlike some of the classic health sciences, neuroscience has been something that has been super interesting. But I think ultimately, though, the brain is just an integral part of, the body, and that's something that I personally have felt from just exploring the topic and having family illness and such that involve things like Alzheimer's and epilepsy. These are diseases that are growing up in our generations and that, affect, our grandparents and our parents and ourselves at some point. And ultimately, like, if I can be part of a change in whatever technology or future innovations that are coming up, and that's where I think that advancement and excitement of neuroscience and where the field is going is something that's super interesting to me. And, coming to Duke, there is a neuroscience major, and I was like, I just immediately hopped on it. And I genuinely have met so many amazing people through the department here.
So you were like, that's actually really inspiring that you kind of sourced this from your family and your upbringing.
Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned that you have a lot of different passions and you kind of found a way to pursue all of them. So I think a lot of people nowadays, they feel like they have to be really heavily focused in one thing, like specifically medical, but you're also involved in sports and athletics, but also medicine and kind of entrepreneurship a little bit with iStar Valley. How do you manage to follow all these passions and how do you explore those passions and still have a focus in like neuroscience and athletics?
Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing is just being able to understand, like, whatever the passions are, whatever your interests are, but ultimately, like, how can you craft your journey or whatever career you want to do, or just the experience and the knowledge that you have, um, that, you're constantly learning. I think that's the big thing. Like, if you're interested in something like neuroscience, athletics, like, there's a lot of different, niches, but ultimately it's always about kind of learning from people and interacting with people. And I think that's something that for me, I love to meet people. I mean, obviously, I feel that has been a super like great way for me to be able to learn and like meet a lot of people.
Yeah, that's great. Are there any specific projects or initiatives that you're working on in these specific passions that you're excited about?
Yeah, so I went to Cape Town, South Africa this past summer. It's something that I kind of brought back with me is I'm working with a nonprofit organization that works in Cape Town, and we developed an app that basically is connecting different topics and projects. Um, but the way I like to describe it is kind of a crash course brain pop video, but with small segmented 2-minute videos that um, tailored towards what interests kids or people living in, more impoverished areas in Cape Town. It's just so that, like, in essence, this kind of is acting as a bridge and a concept and just like a bridge of like information and knowledge that otherwise, regardless of technology, they wouldn't necessarily be able to have. And with this knowledge, you open up things like motivation, you open up, just dreams and, just introducing like a world of possibilities to people. And it's through that kind of thing where I've taken my passions like medicine, and I've taken my passions for other things that have been just super like beneficial and just super, part of my Duke experience and just in general my life experience.
Oh, that's really great. Are there any other activities at Duke that you're involved in that you think have made a really big impact on your development and growth?
The community at Duke, and specifically, I think my community is because I'm involved with a lot of things on campus, but I have different communities that don't necessarily overlap. And I think that's actually nice because for me, I see that as a way that I'm being able to expose myself to different types of people, different environments, different personalities, and just learn, new bits of things that I just never would have otherwise. Because I feel like when you surround yourself with people that are different from you, you constantly are able to learn. You're constantly able to subject yourself to just different viewpoints and things that you just perspective. I think that's just a big thing. And those are kind of all little tidbits that I've just gained since being at Duke.
Yeah, that's really cool actually. And like talking about your passion projects, I read that you did something related to Parkinson's, and I volunteer with dementia patients and people who have Alzheimer's. So I'm really interested in seeing what type of research you're doing, and could you talk a little bit about that project?
Yeah, I mean, so the research, my research actually took a little bit of a turn, and that's the beauty of research in a sense, and that's something that is part of that learning curve. The big thing is that I basically did work, or I'm doing work currently with like neural networks, and specifically kind of mapping out systems, like basically like systems that disease is like showing how basically like disease is spreading, and so the way that you do that is obviously administer some drugs, and there's a lot of mumbo jumbo with the science. But I think the big thing that I like really kind of took from that and just generally with research is that like it's a process and it's a learning curve, and anyone who's kind of going into science, it's definitely a valuable experience to at least try. Now, that being said, it's not everyone's cup of tea. I've definitely learned a lot of lessons in general, like about unrelated topics, but the basics of persistence, right? When an experiment goes wrong or something like that. So in general, I think it's nice to be able to do research, especially as a pre-med student, because you understand how foundational and how important it is. And just in general, like regardless of the topic, just because you're understanding like the background of just like how knowledge or like a knowledge base is like kind of found. Because I feel like, in general, when you're taught things, you just kind of take it as given. You're just like, okay, I was taught this and I'm sure this is the right way or whatever. So in this case, with research, just in general, is you're really kind of exploring sometimes this groundbreaking thing. You're the first, or you might be one of the first people to look at something. I'm just kind of trying to tie this back to like entrepreneurship and just general, but like I think in general though, it's just a really like good opportunity, and I would definitely recommend anyone should like try it.
That's really cool. At the end there, you just mentioned how like you kind of you're tying it back into entrepreneurship. I'm
Yeah.
wondering how were you able to incorporate that into like your passion for neuroscience and research?
Yeah, I mean, I think with entrepreneurship, that's the kind of beauty of it is that like in essence anything can be, at the end of the day, entrepreneurship is really just starting with an idea and then kind of moving forward with it. Whatever that idea is, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be this big multi-million-dollar startup. Entrepreneurship is just, hey, like, I have this novel idea. Whether it's like, oh, I'm running like a summer camp and I have this idea of how to make it more fun, or, like just that concept of ideation. I think that's the nice thing about research is you start with this idea, you start with a question, you build up on it, right? And then from the engineering perspective and other things, you're able to build upon it and like, make it into a startup or a product, right? But just the process of going from 0 to 100 or from like, just building blocks to final thing is the process of entrepreneurship. And I think that can be really applied in so many different concepts and topics. And I think that's something that I really like, just kind of being able to see the final product in its essence.
Yeah, I think that's really cool how you have a lot of different interests and you try to merge them together. I think personally, I also have different interests and I'm trying to like find out what I want to do with all of that. Specifically, I'm also interested in political science, and I know that you're majoring or minoring in that. So I was wondering how that fits into your current major in neuroscience and how you're incorporating political science into that.
So what I would say, so the reason why I actually decided to do poli sci is because for me and like, anybody, most of my friends and people who know me know that I'm like a very outspoken person. I love meeting people and I love interacting. And the more time that I spend in medicine, the more I've realized that just being around the hospital and doing shadowing and working and, clinic and all kinds of stuff really shows you how important and how valuable the concept and understanding of how to relate your emotions to other people's and also how to work up kind of a social ladder in a sense. Unfortunately, medicine is becoming politics in a lot of more ways than you would think. If you want to get from point A to point B or achieve your dreams, you need to be able to understand the politics of, people and just being able to work with people. And I think that's a large element of poli sci of, politics in general is being able to understand people for who they are and understand people as a person. That is something that I think for me, like, I want to be a surgeon. I want to be a practicing surgeon, but I also know that I actually can do a lot more with my life. I don't know exactly what that is yet. I am only around 20 years old, but that being said, I think that's where some more like Duke has really given me that broader kind of purpose in a sense because I'm able to understand, okay, like, I have these skills and I have these capabilities, so why not use it for something bigger? And that's where the poli sci comes in because unfortunately, neuro at Duke is really like course heavy, and so I wasn't able to fit like a double major in. But I was really interested in political science. I think that's kind of my gateway to be able to enter, just get some more interest and experience with the concept, and also enter a place like law school as a future aspirant.
Wow, yeah, that's really amazing that you are able to really explore all of your interests. I think the main thing that I really got from when you were speaking was that life is not linear. It can be whatever you want, and you don't have to be very strict in one path. I
Oh
think
yeah.
the way that you described the exploration and just what life is really supposed to be. You don't need to be in one career path. You don't need to restrict yourself. So I absolutely love that. And as we're talking about kind of, how you live your life, like we really like this is probably the biggest question that we wanted to ask. What's one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self or younger people around the world in terms of like just life experience? It could be very specific, it could be very broad. So we just want to know your take. Like, what's one piece of advice that you would give?
Honestly speaking, I think like because this is not the first time I've gotten this question. I'm gonna do something different. I'm actually gonna change what I normally would say, and I think actually what I want to say a little bit more, kind of, and this kind of I guess comes from a little bit more of the heart and a little bit more of honestly, just like kind of more recent events. I think it's just like take things slower. I think that for me, like just in general growing up, like I think I let life low key just go a little too fast. Sometimes if I could go back, I think a big thing I would tell myself is just to know that it's the little moments in life that like not even make a difference, but it's the little moments that you'll never forget. Whether that's my college experience, I'm about to finish junior year, and I remember sitting in my orientation week, and I was like, wow. But then if I go back another 10 years, I remember sitting in my middle school sixth grade classroom, and it's the smaller things, but then if I could really remember one or two things and like, took that day or took one day, that I was just having a bad day of practice or a bad exam one day or something, right? And I can just be like, hey, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, one. And then two, everything in life actually does really happen for good. And I personally really believe that. Something that puts you in an unfortunate situation or a conflict or something that just happened in life that didn't go your way, ultimately for some reason something happens and fate is there for everyone, but I'm just saying that you have control over a lot of things, but being able to take it slow and kind of just be more intentional with your life, I feel like is something that like I would have told myself whenever the English was Englishing, I guess, in that sense. So whenever I could like mentally process what that meant, maybe when I was like 14 or something, like I would tell myself that. But yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. I feel like that's definitely a really relevant piece of advice in a very fast-paced society that we're living in today.
Yeah.
Um, Avi, do you have any other questions?
No, I think that's a great piece of advice. I think that I never really looked at life that way, and I guess because you are older but still like younger relatively, you have a great experience and light to shine on that, and it's really gonna inspire young people, not just at iStart, but all over the world. I think Hannah and I, we can definitely take something for that. We were just talking about how we're really interested in different things and we don't know how to combine them. So what you said today has really solidified that. So yeah, Hannah, as for your question, I'm all good. If you want to wrap up, I think we're good as well.
I think that's all we have for you today, Monica. Thank you so much for your time. It was really great hearing your story and your advice. Like Tommy said, I think this will be really relevant for a lot of our listeners and will definitely make an impact on their life. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
of
so
course.
much. Bye. Have a good
Yeah, of
one.
course. Take care. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.